In this video, you'll learn why living close to your children in old age might be affecting your happiness and well-being more than you think. We'll also discuss how making a change could improve your quality of life. You may be surprised by the latest findings, but first, I want you to listen carefully to this story because it carries a crucial lesson. Once upon a time, there was a sweet lady named Mrs. Rosa who was 70 years old. After her husband passed away, she decided to move in with her daughter, Lucia. The idea of being close to her grandchildren and helping out at home made Mrs. Rosa feel thrilled. Who wouldn't want to be surrounded by family in their golden years? It seemed like a dream come true. Mrs. Rosa's days were filled with giggles from the kids and the yummy smells of home-cooked meals. Her daughter's house became a cozy haven where mornings were spent making French toast and telling stories, and afternoons were dedicated to helping with homework. Mrs. Rosa felt like she had found the secret to eternal happiness in her grandchildren's smiles, but sometimes things that seem too good to be true are not what they appear. One afternoon, while Mrs. Rosa was preparing dinner, she overheard Lucia on the phone saying, "Mum is a blessing. I don't know what we would do without her." At first, Mrs. Rosa felt proud, but soon a strange feeling of unease crept in. It was like something was missing, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Days turned into weeks and the routine became repetitive. Breakfast, homework, lunch, more homework, dinner. Mrs. Rosa started to miss her old apartment and the freedom she once had. She scolded herself, thinking, "How can I be ungrateful? I have everything I ever wanted." Yet she couldn't shake the feeling of something lost. Then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Rosa's lifelong friend, Carmela, came for a surprise visit. With a warm smile and a bag of cookies, Carmela noticed something was off. Mrs. Rosa, trying to hide her exhaustion, invited Carmela in. As they shared coffee, Carmela saw the mess in Mrs. Rosa's once immaculate home. Concerned, she asked, "Is everything okay?" Mrs. Rosa broke down, revealing her feelings of frustration and being trapped in a life she didn't recognize. Carmela listened carefully and shared her own experience of moving in with her kids and eventually realizing it was a mistake. Carmela explained how she found happiness again by moving into her own apartment. She quoted philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson saying, "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be." Carmela's decision to reclaim her independence had improved her relationship with her children and brought her true happiness. Mrs. Rosa was inspired. She decided to take small steps towards independence, starting with a solitary walk in the park. It felt like an oasis in the desert. She also signed up for a painting class at the community center, rediscovering her passion for art. Studies from Harvard University showed that maintaining independence not only improves mental health, but can also extend life expectancy. Mrs. Rosa felt rejuvenated with each new activity and decision, though guilt sometimes crept in. She remembered Carmela's advice, "You can't pour from an empty cup." Taking care of herself was necessary to continue caring for others. Mrs. Rosa's newfound independence brought surprising changes. Her energy increased, her chronic pain decreased, and her memory improved. She reshaped her life with each new experience and noticed that time with her family became more valuable and meaningful. Finally, Mrs. Rosa gathered the courage to talk to her daughter, Lucia. She explained that she needed her own space to grow and enjoy her life. Lucia was initially surprised and worried, but after a heartfelt conversation, she understood. Mrs. Rosa promised to make delicious meals for Lucia to enjoy when she visited her. Mrs. Rosa's journey teaches us that seeking family closeness can sometimes lead to feeling trapped. True happiness comes from finding a balance between family responsibilities and personal growth. As philosopher Seneca said, Life is long if you know how to use it. Mrs. Rosa learned to use her life to its fullest, finding joy and fulfillment in the process. And so Mrs. Rosa's story ends with a new beginning, filled with possibilities and a renewed sense of self. Dr. Maria Elena Rodriguez says, "These hard talks are really important for keeping healthy relationships between parents and their grown-up kids. Talking openly can make families even closer, even when big changes are happening." As Lucia listened, she started to see things from her mum's side. "I guess we all need our own space," she thought. "You've spent so many years taking care of us." Mrs. Rosa nodded, happy that her daughter understood. "Exactly, and now I want to take care of myself." She smiled and added, "Like the poet Rumi once said, yesterday I was smart, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself." Lucia smiled back with pride and said, "Well, Mum, we'll help you find the perfect apartment, one with a big kitchen for all your secret recipes." Mrs. Rosa's eyes lit up, adding, "And a balcony for my plants." The day Mrs. Rosa moved into her new apartment, she felt both excited and nervous. "Am I doing the right thing?" she wondered. But she reminded herself of a quote by Carl Jung. "I am not what has happened to me, I am what I choose to be." Mrs. Rosa chose to be brave. Decorating her new home turned out to be a fun way to express herself. She picked things that reflected her personality, like a colorful rug she loved, but her daughter thought was too bright. She even painted a wall turquoise. "If only Ramon could see me now," she laughed, thinking of her late husband. Mrs. Rosa's real adventure began when she stepped out of her comfort zone. She signed up for a gardening workshop and met Mrs. Consuelo, a widow with a great sense of humor. Together, they learned about active aging. It's not just about staying busy, it's about living with purpose. They even joined a yoga class, which was a bit of a disaster at first, but soon they both got better at it. More importantly, they laughed a lot, something they hadn't done in years. One day after class, Mrs. Consuelo said, "Have you noticed we don't complain about our aches and pains anymore?" Mrs. Rosa realized they were having so much fun that they had forgotten all about getting old. Mrs. Rosa's relationship with her family also improved. Since she had her own space, visits from her kids and grandkids became more special. She wasn't just a grandma sitting in front of the TV anymore. Instead, her grandkids joined her in fun activities like painting. One day, they found her with paint all over, and her grandson shouted, "Grandma, you look like Picasso." She laughed and replied, "Picasso? No way, I'm the great Rosa." Even phone calls with her family became more meaningful. Instead of quick chats, they turned into long, heartfelt conversations. Lucia admitted, "Seeing Mum so happy and independent inspired me to chase my own dreams." It was like Mrs. Rosa's happiness was contagious. In fact, a study from the University of Michigan found that older people who stay independent have higher life satisfaction and better family relationships. Mrs. Rosa's journey showed how taking care of yourself can make you a better part of your family. Through her experience, Mrs. Rosa learned that real love gives people room to grow. As the poet Khalil Gibran said, "Leave space in your togetherness." Sometimes, distance helps us appreciate the people we love even more. Now, dear viewers, think about your own life. Are you living for yourself or for others? It's never too late to make a change. If there's something you've always wanted to do, go for it. Life is too short to live in fear. Get out of your comfort zone and do things that excite you. If you made it to the end of this video, write "Water is powerful" in the comments, so I know you're one of the champions who finished watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this. And if you want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. You'll get exclusive benefits, and I'll leave a link in the pinned comment. Thank you for your support. Now click on this video to keep feeding your mind with more wisdom. A big hug to all of you, and see you next time.